Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode number 85 for you guys today. And for this week's episode, we're going to kick things off, and I'll be sharing my fight summary that took place in the sport of boxing last night between David Benavidez and David Morrell. So last night in the sport of boxing, you saw David Benavidez successfully retain his interim WBC light heavyweight title by picking up a unanimous decision victory against David Morrell in the first PBC pay-per-view card of the calendar year 2025. So, my thoughts on this fight. This fight was everything that you wanted as a boxing fan. This is everything that we thought that we were going to get, some explosive fireworks between two powerful light heavyweight fighters in David Benavidez and David Morrell. It was back and forth action for all 12 rounds of this fight. Both fighters stood in the pocket all night long and went blow for blow, tack for tack, with powerful, significant strikes that were landed in the pocket last night. This already has a Fight of the Year candidacy for the calendar year 2025 already, and we're all only in the month of February. That's how good this fight was, action-packed between David Benavidez and David Morrell. But in the end, it was David Benavidez who outboxed David Morrell. He had success landing the power strikes, the power punches, had success landing the jab, going downstairs to the body to slow down David Morrell at times offensively. And you could tell that David Benavidez and David Morrell were having one hell of a time in that fight. Now, there was some controversial things that happened towards the end of the fight, the round 11, where David Morrell scored the knockdown on David Benavidez. I don't think that should have been a knockdown. Looking back at the fight this morning, David Benavidez and David Morrell, one, their feet got tied and tangled up with each other. Two, it wasn't a punch that David Morrell landed. It was David Benavidez had his arm up, and David Morrell gave David Benavidez a little push to the ground. And with the two gloves touching the canvas, the referee called it a knockdown. Now, obviously, in boxing, if your two gloves touch the canvas, it's labeled as a knockdown. But at that standpoint, David Morrell actually didn't punch David Benavidez. He just kind of pushed him, and David Benavidez was off balance. So that was labeled as a knockdown. And I didn't like that because when you look at the replay, you look back at it in slow motion, it was just a push, accidental arm push that sent David Benavidez to the canvas with him putting his two gloves down on the canvas, and that was scoring a knockdown. So I didn't like that. And then also towards the end of the 11th round, well, actually after the 11th round, the bell rang and David Morrell landed a shot way after the bell rang. Well, not way after, but a few seconds after the bell rung on David Benavidez. He landed a right hook on David Benavidez, and the referee was already in between the two respective fighters trying to break them up. So they go to the corners for the 12th and final round of the fight. But David Morrell hitting David Benavidez with that right hook, and the referee being this close away from getting hit, he gave David Morrell a point deduction. Now that I agree with. The point deduction I do agree with. You got to listen to the bell. You got to be aware of what the referee is telling you to do, especially towards the end of the fight. And David Morrell he did the wrong thing. So that knockdown that he scored basically got taken away. So those are my thoughts on how the 11th round was heading into the 12th and final round. But other than that, it was really good, and it's really good action between these two light heavyweight fighters. And hopefully these two respective fighters fight each other down the line once again in the sport of boxing, because in a highly anticipated rematch one day in the sport of boxing, with both of these fighters eventually elevating their game and elevating their stock, and you continue to be a threat at this light heavyweight division, or one day they fight at cruiserweight, I think it would be a really cool rematch to see between David Benavidez and David Morrell one day. But looking at David Benavidez's resume now, David Benavidez now moves to 30-0, 30 wins, 0 losses. He's building an impressive resume in the sport of boxing already. The Mexican Monster, the nickname that Iron Mike Tyson gave him, he's starting to live up to that moniker, because the names on his resume is going to age like fine wine. Win against Caleb Plant. Him and Canelo are the only guys to ever defeat Caleb Plant in the sport of boxing. So he's got Caleb Plant on there. Demetrius Andre was the first guy to beat him in the sport of boxing. Govskick, when he moved up to 175 on the Gervonta Davis and Frank Martin card last summer, that was his debut at 175. And a lot of people said that David Benavidez didn't look the best against Govskick. Yes, he didn't look the best, but he still got a unanimous decision victory under the circumstances and the injuries that he was going through the training camp. And Golovkin, if people forget, the Ukraine fighter Golovkin was a former unified champion or former champion at this light heavyweight division. Not only that, but the fact that the only guy to beat Golovkin before David Benavidez did was Arthur Benavidez. So that shows you how good David Benavidez's resume is getting. And then he just picked up a victory against David Morrell. So his resume is starting to pick up some steam. And it's looking pretty good right now. I think it's going to age like fine wine as the years go on in the sport of boxing. But for what's next for David Benavidez, I think David Benavidez knows what's next. At some point in 2025, he's guaranteed a undisputed title opportunity at the light heavyweight division. And that is putting his attention on the winner of this month's rematch between Arthur Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol, because David Benavidez holds the interim WBC light heavyweight title. David Benavidez deserves a shot at becoming an undisputed champion. Not only is he the interim champion here, but he was the interim WBC champion at the super middleweight division, and Canelo never gave him an undisputed championship opportunity. And I think he will get a undisputed title shot against whether it's Arthur Benavidez or Dimitri Bivol by the end of 2025. And whoever wins that rematch between Bivol and Benavidez, I think that fight between the winner of that fight fighting David Benavidez, that's going to be one hell of a fight already. Styles makes fights in the sport of boxing. I think based off of the power that David Benavidez possesses, he could give either Benavidez or Bivol a run for their money. I think he just had to polish up his footwork and his boxing skills, and he could possibly be on his way to become the undisputed champion at light heavyweight by the end of the year. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next at this light heavyweight division. And something that was also touched up on after the Benavidez and Morrell fight last night, where it was the post-fight conference, and David Benavidez was talking about fighting the winner of Benavidez and Bivol. And he said something really interesting, which it's going to be interesting if he does become the guy to be next in line, because he said he does not want to, he would rather fight in Vegas based off the production that he got, being the main event of the PBC pay-per-view card and headlining his own card and selling out the T-Mobile Arena last night against David Morrell. He said he wants to fight in the States, in Vegas, to get that undisputed championship fight against the winner of Bivol and Benavidez, instead of going out to Saudi Arabia to fight over there. So Turki Al-Sheikh is obviously working with a lot of fighters right now in the sport of boxing. He's obviously working with the promoters that Bivol and Benavidez are under, that being Eddie Hearns and Frank Warren of Matchroom and Queensberry Promotions. So Al Heyman, I think Al Heyman and Turki could probably make some good business together. But I do agree with what David Benavidez is saying. If we were talking business in the sport of boxing, I'm not saying he's the A side because he doesn't have the belts, but he's a bigger draw than Dimitri Bivol, and he's a bigger draw than Arthur Benavidez. So why not have that fight take place in the States, in Vegas? So, and I think that's a different topic for a different day. But the quick side note, I think we do have to talk about that. As great as Turki Al-Sheikh has been in the sport of boxing, he's only had one boxing event take place in the States, and that was the Terrence Crawford fight that we saw last summer, that big stack card. So we got to start pivoting back and forth of having the big time fights still remain in the States, and also switching back and forth to Saudi Arabia, because again, someone like David Benavidez, in my opinion, is a bigger draw than what a Dimitri Bivol and an Arthur Benavidez are. I'm not saying that he's better boxers, but I'm saying in terms of being a draw, Benavidez is the bigger star than those two respective fighters. Now, with this next thing, what's next for David Morrell? Now, I think David Morrell has a bright future at the light heavyweight division at 175. I really do. And David Morrell showed me he's a powerful puncher and showed he could be a slick fighter when it matters most. And yes, it was a back and forth collision between himself and David Benavidez for the 12 rounds of the duration of that fight. And even though David Morrell was getting outboxed and outclassed, he showed me not only that it has his boxing skills improved, and he showed me that in the early rounds and when he was facing some adversity as the fight went on, he had no desire to quit or no desire to let his foot off the gas pedal. He fought hard for all 12 rounds. So, and this is only his first career loss. Now we got to get out of the Floyd Mayweather era where if you lose one boxing fight, that's the end of your career. No, losing one fight doesn't define your whole entire career. And it's only up from here because David Morrell could say he took a former world champion at the caliber level of David Benavidez 12 rounds and gave him a legit run for his money, even though he lost by unanimous decision. And his 12th pro fight. So if he did that at his 12th pro fight, can you imagine how good he's going to get as the years go on and he gains more experience in the boxing ring? It's only up from here for David Morrell. I really think he has a bright future. The game plan that he had was really good against David Benavidez. I was just, at times I saw David Morrell retreat, boxing off the back foot. That's something that we really haven't seen David Morrell do a lot in his boxing career up until last night. So, again, most of the fight and most of the action took place in the pocket with the two respective fighters exchanging bombs. But David Morrell boxing off the back foot, I was like, why is he boxing off the back foot? Never seen him really do that, but I think David Morrell really does have a bright future, and I think one day we could see this rematch between the two respective fighters, whether that's at light heavyweight or maybe one day at cruiserweight. I think we're going to see this fight down the line again, and should be better than what we got the first time, even though this first fight was probably going to be in the conversation for one of the best fights of 2025. But before I close out the segment, my thoughts on the rest of the card. Obviously, the David Benavidez versus David Morrell card was fantastic. It was great from start to finish. Stephen Fulton won back. Stephen Fulton is now a 2-division world champion. Won the WBC featherweight title, outclassing Brandon Figueroa. And I thought his attire was absolutely wild. Stephen Fulton came out in a pair of jorts, or boxing shorts designed as jorts, and boxed in Timberlands and boots. And that's probably the craziest boxing outfit that I've ever seen, but he outclassed Brandon Figueroa and won the highly anticipated rematch. A fight that was very close to 2021, but was very one-sided nearly 4 years later. So hats off to Stephen Fulton becoming a 2-division world champion, new WBC flyweight champion. The Isaac Cruz versus Angel Fierro fight, that was a really good fight between the two Mexican fighters. Fun fight. Both of them standing in the pocket, going blow for blow, tack for tack, giving the fans a show. And that was very entertaining on the undercard. And also the Carmel Moten, he was fighting on the premiums of the undercard of this fight. That the premiums, if you guys don't know, that is the fights that take place before the pay-per-view event begins. And Carmel Moten looked pretty good, earning another knockout victory. He now has 6 knockout victories in his young boxing career. But in my opinion, this was a really good PBC card to kick off the calendar year 2025. Hopefully, this is the start of PBC delivering us great action-packed pay-per-view cards, because last night gave us a mix of everything from boxing masterclass performances to action-packed performances. Gave us a mix of everything. So hopefully this is what PBC has in store for the calendar year 2025. But that is my David Benavidez versus David Morrell fight summary.